Yeah, I'm the type that I can't. I've always been like jump into the deep end, start pedaling. Because if I start in a shallow end, I might not go to the deep end. If you're not in it, like even now, I go to work. Maybe I don't work as much like in the kitchen, but when you're there, when you're present, there's a different atmosphere at your business. When you're an absentee owner, you're out golfing, and the business is running on its own. It's not going to be successful. We would send the PG&E check to food purveyor, the food purveyor check to PG&E. That would buy us a week of, hey, you sent me the wrong check. Oh, I'm sorry. Or the first time, I think it was 2 years in, wife came out of the office and she's high-fiving me. Well, I go, what's up? I go, it's the first day we paid all our bills without any shenanigans. Yeah, I'm like, wow. All right, but it took literally 5 years to kind of get us over that hump, and I had to stick to my guns and to my passion of what I was doing, and then people start to understand that, okay, when we go there, we're going to get quality. We might pay more for it, but we're going to get quality.
Welcome to the REimagined podcast.
All right, guys, I got a special one for us today. I got my good friend and restaurant and food master and connoisseur. He's an entrepreneur and just a great story that we're going to hear today. Got none other than Vatche here today. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me, man.
Yeah. Cool. So I got to introduce, I told you a little bit about this before when you got in. We were chatting that Vatche and I, he may not remember, but I met you when I was a kid and my dad was taking me to your restaurant.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
I think the old restaurant.
Yeah. And that was called?
Same thing, Crack Pepper Bistro,
right.
But we were on Shaw and Fresno.
How many different you've only been at now? Two locations, right?
And then we had Yalla Flyington, Fort Washington.
Right.
And I closed that right after my daughter was born.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's, my dad took me there too.
Yeah.
And it was the chase of Vatche, but Vatche is the owner of Crack Pepper. And I told Vatche, my dad passed away. Vatche knows that. And the special memories I have with my father was the treat of going to the best restaurant in town.
Oh, thank you.
And it was really special to me. But what I learned through it is not only the amazing food that obviously us being 100% Italian was chasing, was what you created in Fresno and have maintained and established and continue to maintain is when my wife and I are going on date night, which we try to do weekly, saw Vatche last week, is, it's like always like, oh, where we're going to go, right? Fresno being a small, big town, and it always ends up being Crack Pepper. So tell us a little bit about that, because most people see the success, and we had a conversation about this actually at dinner last week with you. Most people just think like, oh man, that was an instant success story of Crack Pepper, high-end restaurant, quality food. What does that look like?
I wish
building that up.
I wish it was that easy, man. I wish when we first opened, it was scary. I mean, we literally spent every penny we had opening the place up, and we still hadn't bought like groceries for the restaurant, like meats and potatoes and rice, just the starches, nothing. Yeah. We had nothing going on, and I think we spent the last $4,000 on the food. And after that, it was just like sink or swim. And
what year was this?
This was 2007.
Okay.
So it was pretty scary. I mean,
so you opened right before the big financial crisis.
Yeah, and then we didn't have a beer and wine license. We couldn't afford it, and the city was giving us a hard time trying to get it. And Flemings had just moved in across the way, and they got it right away. So I was a little frustrated. So and for a while, we were just letting people bring in their wine.
Yeah.
And that went for about a year, and then we finally were able to apply, and then I get a call from the city of Fresno or the ABC, because I still allowing people to bring beer and wine in. Yeah. And not knowing anything, I thought that was okay. Yeah. I said yes. They're like, oh, you can't do that anymore. I'm like, oh my God. It's like, what am I going to tell my customers? I literally had people, like bootleg days, like go out to the car, drink wine, and come back inside in their jackets and fur coats, the ladies, and it was funny. I have still people that talk about it, And
how long did that last?
About 6 months.
Okay.
About 6 months, and we're
long enough.
Long enough to be scared and but it was didn't really have an opportunity to think about failing. We opened it, put everything we had into it. My wife was still working at that point, and she was supporting. Yeah. So, and I had put in everything that I had into this business, and so it had to work. So it just
you had no other option. But before we get there, real quick, because I want the audience to hear more of that story. What was your background to become a restaurant owner and a chef? Right? Was it a chef background, a cooking background?
No, to be honest with you, we had moved a lot when I was younger. I was born in Lebanon. We escaped the war, moved to Syria, to Greece, to Canada. And when we got to Canada, my mom and dad both had to work. So my mom would literally put dishes together in a pan or whatever and say at 4:30, put this in the oven until we come home. So they had a hot meal to come home to.
Wow.
So that went on for about 6 months. And then she would say, okay, put this and this and this together and put it in the oven. And then I was watching like a public broadcast channel like Yank and Cook.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, she would say, okay, do whatever you want. And I would mimic some of the stuff he was making. And my parents had some interesting meals, you know. And at that point, I was maybe 10 years old.
Wow.
11 years old. And then, so that kind of, I think, gave me the bug. And when I moved to Fresno, that's not what we did. My parents owned a shoe repair store. They opened a second shoe repair shop, and I hated it. And, you know, I didn't really want to do that. And then I had a carpet cleaning business and just different businesses. I've always been an entrepreneur, I guess, at heart.
Yeah.
You know, and then Food Network came about. And I see all these guys, Emilio Lagasse, Bobby Flays, all those guys cooking. I'm going, that's kind of cool. I mean, that's an interesting field to go into. So I did some research, found a culinary school, and at that point I was 32.
Wow.
Yeah. I joke, I go, Jesus didn't leave home until I was 32. So I was following good footsteps, you know?
Yeah. But little did you know that what was a need of your mom requiring you to put the food to warm up and then transitions into developing meals taught you what was the start of the interest of where you're at today.
That's where I got the bug. And then when I moved here, a lot of my buddies would go camping, and I didn't have any camping gear, never been camping, and they'd say, okay, if you cook, we'll bring all the extra stuff for you.
Yeah.
So I just would buy stuff for them and cook, and I always enjoyed cooking, but I never thought that I could do it as a career. I didn't know that existed at that point.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So 2007, you have this idea, I'm going to open a restaurant. Did you have a vision in place? It sounds like you kind of winged it, right? Of like, hey, wife, I'm going to open a restaurant and we're going to sell quality food. I mean,
to be honest, I couldn't get a job.
No way. So you're just like, hey.
I would apply at that point. Chef's Table was open. Roy Harlan had his restaurant.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys like I admired back then, I was like, wow, these guys have really done it.
Yeah.
And I would take resumes, wouldn't get callbacks, and so I was just like, it was more of a necessity. It's like, okay, I just went to culinary school. I have all these skills, but I can't get a job.
Right.
I ended up teaching at the culinary school by the airport for a little bit. And that was the best thing that could have happened to me because I had to kind of go back to being a cook. Not training people to be chefs or training to be cooks. I had to explain to them, okay, get the pan hot. Let's put the steak presentation side down first. So I had to go back and relearn the steps.
Yeah.
Because if I just opened a restaurant and said, hey, put a steak on the grill or saute
you wouldn't know how to do it.
They wouldn't know how to do it. So it had really helped me going back to school and teaching to be able to open my restaurant and guide people through the process of cooking.
Yeah.
So, and then this little place popped up. I was always looking on Craigslist or this and that for places to pop up, restaurants. And it was a Torta Express, a little sandwich shop. They weren't making it. Literally went in there, talked to them, and they said, yeah, we want to sell it, but we have a guy from LA. I'm like, well, I'm here right now. I go, why are you going to wait for the guy from LA? I'll pay you what you want for it. Mm-hmm. And literally that next day went home, borrowed some money from parents and whatever we had and put a down payment at $24,000.
Let's pause there real quick. So in the beginning of the story, right when you thought I wouldn't call it rock bottom, right? But like you're out of options, right? Can't get a job. Mm-hmm. I got to go back to this very fundamental, which is actually now as you see it in the future, because most people don't see it at the present of, hey man, these are huge fundamental necessities I need and still have to this day that make my company successful, right? But like, what's that mindset like when basically the odds are against you? You have a very strong mindset. I mean, I'm selfish. I've known you for a while, but for the audience of like, most people would probably give up of like, oh, I'm going to stay there and stay put. I mean, you have the entrepreneurial mindset, but like 32, things are getting harder as you get older.
Right.
and not much options out there. There's already heavy competition. I don't know if the restaurant industry was as saturated then as it is today, but
It was a different market. I mean, the guys back then I would look up to would be like Pat LaRocca.
Yeah.
You know, I love the guy. He's just amazing. So a lot of like the old school guys, they're still available. They're still cooking. They're still in the kitchen. You know, I love going to Five because Pat's just such an awesome guy. So those are the guys like the Dave Fanslers, and those are the guys that I would look up to going, okay, these guys are still in the game. They're still doing a good job. I learned a lot from watching them, and I just knew I had to be persistent in what I was doing. And in the past, I wouldn't give that time frame for any business. After 2 years, I would get bored and move on. And I had a good friend one time said, you have to put in 7 years.
wow.
I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, you have to dedicate 7 years to your craft to be successful.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuck with me. I go, okay, I got to.
So you knew going into this it was a journey and not a race.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was scary at first. I mean, I'd come home. My wife would say, how many customers we do tonight? I'd be like, 10, 15. Yeah. And she's like, change the menu.
Did you think it was going to be different when you launched it? So I cut you off, but so you did the build out, pretty much ran through your whole budget, probably borrowed a ton of money.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I actually got to put food on these plates. And
yeah, pretty much. I came from San Francisco. The mindset, a culinary school was there. In Reno, summer was their busier months.
Okay.
May, June, July, August. And so we opened right around July.
Yeah. So you're thinking it's going to rain.
It's going to rain. And I'm like, and it was just like dead. And to be honest with you,
because the summers in Fresno are
dead.
too hot.
It's too hot. Nobody goes out. Thank God. There's Kim's Vietnamese restaurant. Do you remember them? They used to be on Maroa. They were across the way. Well, apparently they go on vacation all summer.
No way.
So I made note. I printed out some papers, writing on there, hey, we're on vacation, but our neighbors just opened. Please go support them. So I put it on all their doors.
No way.
And we literally stand outside the door and wave people in.
Wow.
And that's how kind of we grew our...
And this is you and your wife. So
No, not my wife. I had a guy that used to work at Michael's.
Okay.
He came over. He was one. So when I opened the restaurant, it's all culinary students.
Oh, wow.
I hired all students. So not only did I have to remember what I was cooking, I had to remember what everybody else was doing,
right,
and timing. And him being in the car lot business, it was really funny. He had no shame in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, he can go talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Nothing was holding him back. So he'd literally stand out there, hey, come on in, let's try the restaurant today. Walk him down, sit him down.
It was like
amazing.
selling a car for him to
it
sell
was.
a plate.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was fun. It was fun times. I mean, but it just took a life of its own. The customers kind of started growing. People would take menus, scan them, email them to their friends.
Wow.
Dr. Stobie was one of the original customers that I had.
Did you have to go and ask for that, or did the product promote itself?
The product promoted itself.
Wow, okay.
It was so good, and we were just focusing on the highest quality that we could get.
Interesting.
It was never like, what is the cheapest I can buy from a vendor? It's like, what is the best that you have?
Was that the most profitable direction to go, or you just believed in that direction?
I just believed in that direction. So that came back from my dad, which I didn't realize. So when my dad was opening the Shrever Bear shop in Fresno, and I would tell him, hey, why don't you buy like cheaper products so you make more money on the end, right?
Which is most business people's thought process.
Yeah, and he would say no. And he would say, no, that shoe that's leaving here has my name on it. When that customer's wearing it, if it breaks down or if it goes bad in a couple of weeks, I'm going to look bad. Right. So he would only buy the best possible product to promote his business. And they were busy. And back then I was young, so I wasn't really thinking like, what is my dad teaching me? That was like, he didn't speak much, my dad. He wasn't like he loved me, but not like mentoring wise, business wise, he wasn't really, he just knew what to do, what he was to do, because they were surviving life. Yeah. So.
That probably has a little bit to do with how old school generations were, though. I don't mean to get off topic,
I
but
agree.
Like they knew the right thing, morally, ethically, and they did it.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be explained.
No.
Today, what the sad part about today is you have to explain. I mean, you have kids, I have kids.
Yeah.
It's like, why do I have to tell you what's right or wrong? It's very clear, but we were lucky enough to be raised by those type of parents.
Yeah,
right?
And the old school guys were just, I mean, they were hard. They loved us. You knew you were loved.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear I love you until I was 26 years old. Wow. My mom did, but my dad was like very old school, macho guy. So, but those are things that when you're there, you're like going, what's going on? Because back home, that's normal. This is America, right? So as a young kid in America, I hear that from other parents.
Interesting.
And I don't see it at home, so it was just like that transition of cultural change was really weird.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you told me a funny story at dinner a couple weeks ago about, again, I think the audience knows now the obstacles you had to overcome to get it launched, right?
Right.
And then 6 months to people to believe, taste the product and say like, man, I got to try that again. I need to share it with friends. But it still wasn't that easy. Like how long, you told me some funny stories of how you were
Creative.
pretty much, creative and paying bills in very unique ways. But like, how long does that last? And again, it's just, I mainly asked that question for the point of like, most people would be like, this is too tough. It's not working out. I knew you had that journey thought process and you really stuck to it, it sounds like. But were there times and moments where it was just like, man, like I don't know how long I can keep not making money?
I never thought that.
But there was times you felt it, right?
I felt it because the bank account, there was nothing there. I felt it, but I never thought I need to stop and find something else.
So quitting was not an option.
Quitting was not an option. I'm already 32. At that point, culinary school, 33, 34. I moved to Reno. And to be honest, I don't know if it's legal now, but we would send the PG&E check to food purveyor, the food purveyor check to PG&E, and that would buy us a week of, hey, you sent me the wrong check. Oh, I'm sorry. Or sends a check without signing it. Now they deposit it. Now they don't even care.
Yeah.
But stuff like that, and we had to do. I remember the first time, I think it was 2 years in, my wife came out of the office and, she's high-fiving me. Well, I go, what's up? I go, it's the first day we paid all our bills without any shenanigans.
In time.
Yeah, I'm like,
wow.
All right. But it took literally 5 years to kind of get us over that hump. And I had to stick to my guns and to my passion of what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then people start to understand that, okay, when we go there, we're going to get quality. We might pay more for it, but we're going to get quality.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, it's hit and miss. I didn't want to be that restaurant. I didn't want to be the hit and miss restaurant. Don't get me wrong. We have our good days and bad days.
Yeah.
And anybody does, any business, But I have more good days than bad days, So
that's all that matters.
I remember a chef in San Francisco, if anybody showed up to work upset, he would send them home.
Wow.
And he would say, you're not going to cook good food today. Go home.
Because he didn't want that to be a representation of his product.
Yes. And I learned that. I mean, I've done that in my time, Like I had one chef in Reno, genius guy, used to wash dishes once a month. And I go, why are you washing dishes, dude? I go, you're like this master chef, top chef. He goes, I want to see what people are sending back. I want to see what's on the plate so I can adjust my menu.
Have you ever done that?
I have. I've gone to the kitchen and I haven't washed dishes. At first I did when it first opened, because after shift we'd all have to wash dishes.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a dishwasher.
But that shows how much you care. I mean, I'm in the real estate world, and when we're heavy into investments, flipping homes, most people think like, oh, his parents must have money. He goes and buys houses. He doesn't care whether he wins or loses. They don't recognize that when my dad passed away, I didn't touch any of his money, nor was there a significant amount left for me. I bought my first house off of Craigslist at 21.
Right.
I jumped over the fence to inspect the property, bought it, lived in it while I was fixing up.
Right.
So I was scraping popcorn ceilings by myself, and you're a handyman too, so this and can appreciate it. I was gutting it. I was not married at the time, so dating, in and out, which didn't look the best presentation on my behalf. But I wanted to learn, hey, if I'm going to be bossing people around and running an organization that does this constantly, I need to know what's going on, right? So the same application seems to apply within the restaurant industry.
It does. If you're not in it, like even now I go to work, maybe I don't work as much like in the kitchen, or I do develop the menu, I teach the staff how to do it. But when you're there, when you're present, there's a different atmosphere at your business. When you're an absentee owner, you're out golfing or I'm out, fishing or whatever, and the business is running on its own, it's not going to be successful.
Right.
It's not. You have to be there as an owner and, visit the tables, talk to your staff, and, sometimes you can get a read from a customer and you kind of go back and revisit that table or what food they bought, and, they might not tell you the truth.
Right.
Everybody says, oh, it's great, and leave. and they'll never come back.
Yeah.
But I start questioning the staff. Hey, what happened at that table? How come they didn't finish everything? What was this? What was that? Why did the steak only come?
So you're constantly even. So man, you're 15 plus years in the business.
Oh yeah.
For Cracked Pepper, and you're still doing that, trying to improve to like study dishes that are being sent back.
Still improve. We can't stop in cooking. It's never perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to find a happy medium and send it out, but it's still room for improvement. Even now, like I'll create a dish, I'll give it to the kitchen, we go through it, we cook it. So we have a rule of thumb. It takes 7 times to get it right before we even run it as a special.
Wow.
We'll cook it 7 times, retaste, adjust, and then production time comes, and I'm sitting back and watching. Well, it's not working out like I planned it out in my head. It's taking way too long, or it's just way too many steps. So I have to take that item back off the menu, rework it.
And how often does this happen within a given year?
Well, each time we produce a dish, it's the same thing.
Wow.
It's each time it's its own living, breathing thing.
Dang.
Yeah, it's not our menu. It's a living, breathing thing. We change it constantly.
Yeah.
It could start one way, beginning of shift, by end of shift.
It's a different.
I'm changing it, and the staff is frustrated at me.
But that's why it chooses us to keep coming back, right? I mean, it's just knowing that food's always going to be quality. The atmosphere, environment is going to be the best, because you care so much.
I care, and Fresno is not a big tourist town. We have the customers that we have. Mm-hmm. That's it. Nobody's coming through like going to a Golden Gate Bridge.
If they get lucky, they are.
Yeah, I mean, Yosemite. It's funny. My first customers were from England, and it was funny because I go to the table. You go, man. I go, you hit everything right on the bistro, this and that. But I goes, we're never going to be back. And that hurt me. Like, so I go, what do you mean you're not going to be back? Yeah. I go, you just said everything was great. He goes, we're visiting from England. We just found you on at that point it was Chowhound, I think. Right? Yeah. And then we're going to go to Yosemite. And so about 5 years later, I'm talking to another group. They're from England, and we start talking, and they're like, I go, how'd you guys hear about us? He goes, oh, you had your first customers.
No way, talking about it in England.
I was like,
that's
all right.
So cool.
That's cool.
That's so cool. Yeah. So what, we're in the real estate business. Everyone felt the recession, 08, 09, financial crisis. Mm-hmm. There's coronavirus, which that's a whole different podcast and conversation. But what, did you have some cycles?
We did better during that time frame than most other restaurants. And what I realized was, even financially, if we're hurting, they're still going to go out and eat, right? And if I would cut my quality of my product or run 2-for-1s or whatever, then I'm only showing my hand in the sense of like, I've been serving you crappy product.
Yeah, but there was still a slowdown during those recessionary times?
A lot of my customers actually stepped up their visits.
Wow, because they didn't support local.
Support local. They didn't want us to close, so a lot of my customers at that point have become friends, and they're like, we're going to step up our visits, come more often. But in return, what we did was we looked for better products again. Instead of cutting the quality, like if I could have gone from a prime to a select,
so your quality of product didn't decrease.
No, I was like, okay, it's this prime. I go, can we get even higher? Can we get H prime? Can we get Wagyu? And we pushed for better product, and that really elevated us even more because people are coming in. If they had $40 or $50 to spend, they got their money's worth.
Wow.
I might have made a little bit less money during that time, but the quality never.
So you had a natural Warren Buffett instinct of like, his saying is, when people get scared, I get happy. When people are too happy, I get scared, right? So when instantly that all signs of the economy are showing you to cut prices, cut staff, decrease expenses, you went the opposite. You leaned fully in and said, hey, let's double down, increase the quality of the products, the type of products, etc.
And then just up the service. And, I tell all my staff, not all the time, we have meetings once in a while, and I tell them, I go, people can choose to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Even for your business, right? People can go anywhere. Yeah. But it's how they're treated when they're here is what's going to determine if they're going to come back. So if we treat them with respect and love, and they come in upset and they leave happy, we've won.
Yeah. So was that a tough one to get over? So like that's a really cool conversation to have. So we're talking about customer service, right? So you're a true chef that you became, and then you start a company and it's like, okay, do I focus more on the cooking? And then now you got the customer service, right? Two totally different animals, right? You got to make sure you have the perfect product and then the perfect service. Was that a struggle?
That's very struggle because I come from Armenian culture, right? Where hospitality is like in our nature.
Yeah.
I remember my dad in Lebanon when we had people coming over to the house. He'd go out and buy 10 different packs of cigarettes. That's when people smoked.
Yeah.
Just to make sure the people coming had something they liked.
Wow.
So because he didn't want his guests to come to his house.
Make them happy.
So what I learned from my parents back then, everything people touch, feel, all that has to be high quality, right? It has to be good. But when it comes to service, your food could be mediocre, and if your service is great, people are going to come back. If your food is incredible, I've seen a lot of good restaurants close because the service sucked.
Yeah.
It was horrible, and people will not come back.
Yeah.
So your service has to be better than the quality that you're serving, and that's what brings people back, because in that 2 hours they're escaping whatever, right? Their kids, their stress of life. So in those 2 hours, they should be treated with respect and love, so they're enjoying those 2 hours.
Yeah, or they're celebrating
birthdays, anniversaries. If you're not meeting that, they're constantly struggle to get water or this and that.
Wow.
And don't get me wrong, it still happens to us. We strive to be perfect, but it's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
It's hard to meet everybody's.
No, that's a whole topic in itself of trying to please everyone, which we're in a customer service business, both of us being in obviously sales.
Right.
But, it has something to say, like, for instance, we specialize in the luxury real estate, right? Mm-hmm. And I was telling you, my grandfather, which was Nico Gentile, they had great customer service, great products, similar to yourself. So when I was a young kid, it was cracked pepper and it was Nico Gentile, and I'm looking up to these things. And my grandfather was teaching me, always invest in self. Right. So the investment in self is to the degree of, constantly elevating the product and the customer service. But that's a continued thing, right? Because the market's always evolving.
It's always evolving. The customer's changing. But you had all those great examples, right? Like of dad, grandfather taking you to places and showing you, and you weren't even thinking of it, but you were inheriting those skills without even really for them to teach you, So, and having a strong person behind you too, like your wife or my wife, right? They get the worst end of the deal really in my industry because they're at home with the kids, and we're kind of just out there entertaining. We're part of our job is entertainment, So that in my industry, the wives really get the hard part of it. So, and
was that tough for you to we in our last podcast we were talking about worth. Was your worth determined by the reviews or the comments back from your customers? So was your worth at a high level when you got the praise, and then if you got the depraise, say bad employees who are not servicing good, or you're seeing that customers aren't liking their dishes, maybe that happened at a dish or just one customer. Was that a mental mindset to adjust to, or?
When I first opened, I think Yelp started. That was kind of just starting to come out, and I was really into it. And we'd get to the point where we'd invite guests back, and just pamper them, right?
Yeah.
And then I just realized it wasn't working.
Those aren't the customers that you need to work with.
If that person's miserable, is not an unhappy person, he or she is never going to be happy, no matter what you do.
Right.
So even after we do that, they would still go back and write another bad review that was something we did wrong. So about 2 years in, I stopped reading reviews. I don't look at them.
Because you didn't want the outside influence to determine how you operate. Was that kind of the mindset of it?
If my 90% of customers I'm keeping happy.
Yeah.
If that 10%, you have to take that. It's just I can't make everybody happy.
Right.
And if I'm keeping my 90% of the customers happy, or I would read something like, the French fries were frozen, I could tell they're from a bag. I'm like, no, we blanch them, we do this. There's a process, right?
So you knew you had a valuable product, so the noise didn't matter to you because you believed in what you did. And similar to ours, it's like, I try to teach my agents is that if you can become, through educating yourself and putting in the work and the time to be that true professional, whether it's cooking or real estate, the noise doesn't matter because it's going to be it's a result of your product.
Yeah.
right? So how can we help assist people in the luxury real estate brand? It's knowing your product, knowing the build, knowing the builder, knowing the finishes, knowing the area, the neighborhoods, etc. Same thing with you. It's like you know all the ingredients, you know how it's presented and prepped, you know how it's delivered or should be delivered.
Right. And you take pride in what you do. I mean, that's where it shows for me, you, even like CJ. I was talking to him a while ago. Same thing, right? I mean, he sells a great product, but if the salesman doesn't know the product, like your salesman doesn't know the product, my staff doesn't know what the product is, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
You have to, as a person working in any field, you have to learn your product, your craft, right? And that's the only way you can go forward. Because if you're just guessing or BSing people, I remember going to Trailio's one time, and it's funny. He had a list of pictures back there of chefs and people in the industry, and it said, "Do not BS these people."
He knows. They've earned the not BS.
Yeah. So there, and then, but I took that further, right? I took that, okay, well, we can't BS anybody.
Right.
Because with Google these days, or able to research the bottle of wine you're buying to, if you tell them it's a Wagyu from here, they can easily look it up in a second and tell you, no, you're full of, So whatever we say, it has to be the truth.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where
you're only as good as your word.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
And only as good as the last dish you serve in my industry. So that last dish better be perfect every time.
Well, let's talk about your last dish. What Vatche's is getting to. You're known for your signature dessert. My wife and summer party would come in pajamas nightly just to get to the dessert.
The bread pudding.
The bread pudding. So was that like, when did that evolve? And, was that the mindset going into that development of that dish of it's the last meal that they're going to remember?
Well, in our industry, they say the first and the last thing you have is what you remember. Everything in the middle.
That's why the Napoleon's never been taken away.
Yeah, so the navel's never been taken away. That's why the bread pudding's never been taken away. Those are the two things, like the first and last is kind of in our industry is what they tell us.
I tell these guys it's the first impression. It's like the first touch is so important.
And I'm not a big baker, to be honest with you, and that bread pudding came about just one day. Because at that point we were just trying to make a creme brulee, this and that, and I need something of like a signature dish.
Yeah.
And I remember in Lebanon, my mom used to put a white chocolate with bread, like a pita bread, like a soft bread. We had a stovetop in the middle, and it would melt the chocolate into it, and then that bread would absorb that chocolate, and it was like, and for some reason that stuck in my head.
It just clicked.
Yeah, it just clicked, and I went to the store. I go, how can I mimic that flavor? And I had bought like a croissants, cream cheese danishes, dinner rolls, and just kind of started mixing. Made a custard base and put it on the menu, and it was an instant hit. The caramel sauce, and we baked it to
How many times did that take?
A lot. Between that and the cookies were during COVID. I made 27 batches to get it right, and so. I think I put on like 20 pounds during that, making those. But it's for the research, so it was okay.
Yeah. It was worth it.
It was worth it, and so and it's been a staple. I mean, people buy it for weddings.
Yeah.
People buy it for like birthdays. I've made birthday cake shaped ones before. So.
It's funny. I mean, like it's such an incredible plate that. When we bring guests from all over, right? It's always, hey, pace yourself and save room for the bread pudding.
Right.
So it's amazing. So restaurant is crushing. I don't know if you have any new visions for that or anything to come, but I know I want to talk about your entrepreneurial side of some other ventures you're venturing into.
I'm actually looking into. We opened a coffee shop at the church we're at, and that came about because my daughter went to preschool there.
Okay.
And they were driving my wife. She goes, I want to go back to church there. And my wife and daughter started going to church, and I started going to church because it's hard for me to wake up in the morning, and they happen to have an 11 o'clock service. So I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
And started talking to Pastor Will there, just kind of conversations. And they were looking for somebody to open a coffee shop, and nobody had reached back. And he said, would you be interested? And I was like, I'm not sure. I wasn't really looking for a new business.
Yeah.
And went home, talked to my wife. She said, well, if God is kind of taking us in that direction, let's just do it.
That's very cool.
And I did it. And it was just got in there, started remodeling, and did it, and it was the easiest process I had opening a
Interesting.
business. So I'm like, okay, this is meant to
Meant
be.
to be.
And then in the process of it, trying to find coffee, and I was like, well, I think I can roast my own coffee. You know, I'm a chef. I can figure it out. I started looking into it, went to a couple of classes, and it was a lot like cooking. It's the same concept, like roasting an onion in a pan. You start out with bitter onion, you caramelize it, you get to that flavor that you want. And coffee are the same way. The green beans are bitter. You roast it until you find that nice caramelization that you like, you know. So, and then we decided to start roasting coffee. And
so that started almost as an experiment, or you kind of knew, like, hey, this might be an integral part of our business?
It just happened. Like, that was the coffee shop was in. I was like, okay, this is good. And I'm like, well, what if I start roasting my beans? What if, you know, so I started kind of doing the research, and I really fell in love with the art of roasting coffee, you know, and it's just like you and the machine are just like in sync, right? You gotta roast it, and, you know, it took the classes. I really enjoyed the classes, and then that's kind of coming about. Maybe in about a month or 2 months, going to start having our own brand of coffee.
Nice.
So that's going to be.
And the current church you're in, just for the audience?
Open to the public. Yeah.
No, what's the church called?
Oh, Sanctuary. Oh, Northwest Church.
Northwest.
The coffee shop is called Sanctuary Coffee Shop.
Awesome.
Yeah, and open to the public. We're closed on Mondays, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. during the week, and 7 to 3 on the weekends.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's been great.
So a guy who's created a great brand within Cracked Pepper, busy as can be, father, great husband, and you're like, hey, God's calling me to do something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's been amazing. It's people coming in, they're studying. It's a good place for families. We did a little kids room, so we have moms like that drop off at the preschool and have maybe another child they can put in a little kids room. They can play while their mom can have a little more. Dad can have a little time to himself or herself, and so it's been really interesting. It's
what's your kind of vision for that? I mean, is
for
it
future or like
I mean, just like in general, you know, just, you know, you got coffee shop, you got talking about roasting beans. I mean, is there a vision that goes behind it, or you just kind of the doer, right? Like, hey, you know, this looks and feels right, and I'm capable of doing it. Let's just do it.
Yeah, I'm the type that I've always been like jump into the deep end, start pedaling. Because if I start in a shallow end, I might not go to the deep end.
Right.
You know, the water's too cold or whatever.
So you just know yourself very well. Because most people would try to tread water before they swim. Yeah. And you're just like, let's dive in.
Let's dive in. Like, even the equipment I'm ordering, it's like even one of the guys I was talking to buying some equipment goes, you sure you want to start that size? And don't you want to start with like a 5 kilo? Why are you going to a 200 kilo? I'm going, I don't know, but I don't want to in 6 months.
Have to go buy a bigger one?
Bigger one. Yeah. So might as well go to 20 kilo, you know, and then start going with that process, and I'll learn. I'll mess some stuff up, I'm sure, you know, but I won't, you know, I'll go for fertilizer or something. We'll grind it up. Coffee is a great fertilizer, so you know, so I'll figure it out. But I like to jump in and kind of just start going and figuring it out. It's fun. It's a fun process, right? It's not when you're learning. Especially for me, cooking stuff like doing by hand, like it's fun. I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and just how you kind of got exposed to it. You have children. You're a great father. You love your kids deeply. Your son was bussing last week when we were eating dinner. That's awesome. What, you know, you myself, and then also our mutual friend CJ were talking about this, like the legacy you want to have for your children, or be an example of, just like your parents were in a way different way for you. How do you see that kind of being to your children through the restaurant business and now the coffee shop?
You know, I want them to learn that everything is possible. You know, having a immigrant father coming to this country, you know, with nothing, and it's like when I hear people that are born here and say it's hard. Yeah, it's hard, but if you don't put the work in, it's even harder.
Yeah.
You know, so I want them to know that whatever they want to do is possible. It doesn't have to be restaurant. It doesn't have to be coffee. Anything that they choose, I always tell them, if you're out digging ditches somewhere, you know, but your mindset should always be, how can I be the guy in the office? How can I be the guy in his boss?
Yeah,
how can
always
I get
trying to improve. Yeah.
How can I get to that position from where I'm at right now? So it's okay to do other things. I mean, I worked on a road construction for a while. I did a lot of things, But my goal was always like, how can I improve myself and be, you know, up there? But if you're happy doing something, you should pursue it. I mean,
Right.
you know.
So you don't, your vision for your kids isn't they have to take over the restaurant or the coffee shops, but you're getting them involved, right?
I am. They learn.
Yeah.
My daughter asks great questions. You know, she's a entrepreneur. My son really likes to work hard. So there's like two different aspects of kids. I mean,
Yeah.
she'll ask me like, so when customers come and they're waiting and they get drinks, is that more way for you to make money while they're waiting for your table? She's always like trying to figure out the angles, you know. So she cracks me up. She's 12.
That's awesome.
You know, and he understands the business. He appreciates the back of the house more. So he could be a great chef. He could be anything he wants to be. I don't tell him this is what you have to be. Like I remember, you know, in my culture, if you weren't a doctor, if you weren't a lawyer, like, you know.
It was almost looked down upon if you weren't
not looked upon, but like they're held at a higher value. Right?
Got it.
And I didn't like that growing up. You know, like the plumber that comes to my restaurant on Friday night, I'm sure lives in a great house. It's like $1,000 every time he comes to visit. You know? So
you can make money.
You can make money any way you do it.
That's really cool. You have the mindset of, look, I don't care what you do in life. You know, you don't have to work for me. You don't have to be, you know, the successes that, you know, certain either nationalities or parents have upon their kids. Right. Just be happy and work hard.
If you're happy what you're doing, you'll be successful.
Yeah.
If you're miserable, you're not happy, you dread going to work, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have to do that. Don't get me wrong. A lot of dads out there, moms, have to do that to survive. And I take off my hat to that, you know, because you're doing what it takes to survive.
Yeah.
And
you got to pay the bills.
You got to pay the bills. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, we did that for years. Yeah. I remember when I first moved here in Fresno, my parents had zero money left, and McDonald's used to have a 29-cent hamburger and 39-cent cheeseburger. And if I wanted a cheeseburger, my mom would buy it, take it home, put the cheese on herself at home to save that 10 cents. You know. So I understand hard times.
Right.
You know?
So let's talk about that a little bit. It's called what we talk about a lot, adversity. Right.
Right.
So you went through a lot of adversity as a kid.
Yeah.
Right. Different struggles, and probably when you were a kid, being that time, that wasn't necessarily adversity to you. That was just, hey, we had to do what we had to do. Now, these days, modern days, they call it adversity. You being very successful now, and even myself find this very challenging, and it's a commonly asked question I ask my guest is, how do we dose our kids with enough adversity in their lives, coming from parents who have earned the successes, that have gone through adversity, for them to feel it too? And I don't think adversity needs to be challenged by not giving them a certain dollar amount allowance or throwing them in the trenches. I think it's probably shown by you taking certain risks you do and sacrifices that you constantly, you know, have to take for your family to go operate.
I think no, I agree with you. That's how they see it. That's how they see you leaving home, coming here, working, staying late. You know, and I don't know if you bring them to work and, you know, they can see what dad is doing.
Yeah.
You know, I think they understand that. And for me, we're in an industry where, I mean, we cater to everybody, right? And then so they understand hard times. And, you know, I do a lot of explaining. I was like, hey, like if they want something, somebody has to work this much to get this what you want. So like my son wanted a gold card for his Xbox one time.
Yeah.
I said, it's $100. He goes, well, yeah. He goes, okay, you're gonna come to work, wash dishes, or work in the pantry to get that tonight, or, you know, you're not going to get it. You know, so he goes, okay. And after a few times, he doesn't even ask me.
He knows he's got to go work for it.
He's got to work for it.
That's really cool.
But I also told him it's a waste of money. Like, to buy those stupid packages on Xbox and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's a waste of money. I go, you can use that money in different ways, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm learning that too, because I didn't really I didn't know how to invest. I didn't know how to put money aside. I didn't know how to do all that stuff because we were just spending what we had growing up, right? Other parents had a different views of they were investing, so their kids learn differently.
Yeah.
So
how'd you learn that though? Because that's interesting for me too. My dad died when I was early, so it was kind of tough to say. Mom retired to take care of my brother and I, and you know, when you start generating income, you know, after you get through the hard times that you did, for me, what was big is mentors and friends, right? And that's something I'm constantly teaching my kids. Like, you are who you hang out with.
That's true.
And I used to not believe that as a kid. As you know, if friend over there sags and showing his, you know, butt cheeks through his boxers, eventually you're going to probably be sagging or you're guilty by association.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, just more on the investment side, was that mentors or just kind of gut instinct that you ran with?
It was more mentors, and not necessarily mentors I like shooting. I like doing a lot of stuff. So I would hang out with guys who like to go shooting or cars and stuff like that, and just listen to them talk, or even like customers listening to them talk and being involved in conversations. And a lot of times I felt awkward because these guys are talking in millions, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh my God, it's almost embarrassing to talk at a certain point because. It's like I wasn't even understanding.
Just a lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge, right? And then, but you take that home and you start researching it.
Yeah.
And, I had a friend, we were shooting, he goes, well, I use this guy, go talk to him. I'd go talk to him. He's a real investor.
But you had the desire.
I had the desire. You have to have the desire.
Yeah.
You have to have the desire. I still spend. Thank God in our house, it's like the opposite. My wife's like really frugal, and I'm the spender.
You gotta have a balance.
You have to have a balance, and so she kind of keeps me in balance, But those are things I had to learn. But once you start doing it, once you start seeing the reward of putting the money aside, and you go, oh wow, this is how it works. Compounded interest. You start learning new words. You're going, okay, so if I keep this and don't touch it for 20 years, this is all I have. But that's one aspect, right? But you still have to have other venues of income coming in, So, but it's a great process. I love it. I never thought, to be honest with you, coming from Lebanon, I thought my future was just going to be, I'm going to work for somebody for the rest of my life, and this is what I'm going to do, and I was okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
So as success came, as I grew as a person, is figuring out like a lot of people come here and buy themselves a job, right? When you open like a little mom and pop shop, you're buying yourself a job. And that's what my parents said, nothing wrong with it, because they were not able to go out and work for somebody else.
Yeah.
But that taught me if I open a business, it needs to be a business. I'm not buying myself a job. So like, how can I make this into a successful business and not just an $80,000 salary?
Wow.
Right? So that's the mindset I had the whole time doing it. So I did not want to buy myself a job and be content with what I was making. So
well, that's super interesting. Yeah. So, building out Cracked Pepper like that, were there highs and lows that you can remember that you can share as far as like challenges that push back against that?
Well, when we decided to move to the new location.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
That was scary.
What was the reason for that move?
Well, the shopping center had just sold, and they put a CVS pharmacy in there. I thought it was going to help. It helped the other way. We were getting a lot of people who were substance abuse and in the shopping center.
Not the crowd you were looking for.
Not the crowd. Our cars would get broken into, customer cars, employee cars. One time I had like 4 homeless guys in the front drinking beer.
Yeah, well, you had a pub, liquor store.
It was
Subway,
lingerie
CVS.
Shop.
Yeah,
it was the worst.
Taco Bell.
Yeah, my uncles told me that his friend had a shop there. It's like, if he sells anything over $10, he's not going to make it there.
Jeez.
So just going in was just like the homeless guys in the front. I had those ladies going in and out, and like they didn't want to leave. They were scared. I go, what's wrong? Because there you have homeless guys in the front. I go, oh, they're not homeless guys. I go, they're actors. I go, I paid them to give you that big city atmosphere.
Hey man, it didn't hold my dad and I back. I guess I was too young, but man, we would drive and. Yeah, I remember that old location, and then so you shifted over. What was the fear of that? Wouldn't it be more of like light though? Like,
well, everybody said if you move, it's hard. In Fresno, every business has moved restaurant. Most of the time it failed.
That's true.
Pat LaRocca is the only one that really didn't, fail.
Yeah, no.
Maybe a couple of them are, but about 80% when you move, but I could only improve the shopping center, right? So in my head, I was doing this. Right, and then we had a lease, and I had some bad advice, and they said we could break the lease, and kind of went through it. And the old man that owned the shopping center at that point was really tough and didn't want to.
So this was getting out of your
old lease, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it cost me about $100,000.
Wow.
And that was, one check we had to write. That was just. Scary.
But it was worth the return for the shift over.
It was worth every penny. When we moved into the new location, we had the same customers plus new customers plus the shopping center was better.
Jeez.
We had hard liquor. It was one of the scariest times of transferring because I was paying rent on 2 different places.
Wow.
And, just to be honest with you, I look back, I should have failed like 5 times over.
Wow. But this is so deep, right? Because I feel through my life, the most challenging times have pushed me on the other side to the brightest times.
Yeah.
Right. So that scariest moment in your business life of switching locations, paying that huge bill, paying 2 leases.
Yeah.
Do you think you would be at where you're at today without that transition?
No.
Yeah.
No, we would have closed. That shop.
Wow.
Yeah, that closed. If I didn't do that, but like God never gives you something you can't handle.
No.
So.
But the devil's pushing you to give up.
Yeah.
Right.
All the time.
I mean, it's easier to shut the doors than to push through this adversity of, hey, we don't know what the outcome's going to be, but we hope it's better.
Coming from where I came, and that it's funny. I just had the same conversation maybe an hour ago when I was getting my tire fixed. Somebody said, "If you think you were born here, would you have been as successful, or more successful?"
Yeah.
And I said, "No." He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "I wouldn't have the hunger because coming from a country like that, or just be watching my parents struggle and doing all that stuff, I don't think I would have the hunger to be as successful." I don't know if it's the right thing or wrong thing, but it just, for me,
yeah,
that
it's
worked.
true.
That worked.
Yeah, it's true to you.
It's true to me, and that gave me the passion and the hunger to keep pushing and provide something better for my kids.
Yeah.
For the future.
That's amazing.
So. There's a joke of like people, not joke, but generational wealth.
Yeah.
And I call mine survival wealth.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
no, man. I mean, life is, God's blessed us to deal us cards, and it's all how you play them. And everyone's going to play them different. And you just pray and hope that everyone just has a fair game and, gets challenged by the cards they play and the moves they make. Right. So.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about it. You have to put some process into it. You have to figure out, okay, this is what I like to do, and this is the opportunity I'm getting. Do I take it? And you have to rely on your skills. You said something earlier, how your dad had told you like you're your own best investment.
Yeah. And
I was talking to Dr. Stobie actually. He's one of my, I guess, a mentor from back in the day when we first opened. He's moved since then, and we're talking about investment. And he said the same thing. He goes, "Well, why do you trust a perfect stranger to invest your money,
yeah.
but you don't trust yourself
yeah.
to put that money into you or to grow a business and this and that?"
Yeah.
And it made complete sense. I'm like going, "Oh, wow." Another knowledge he gave me, I still follow to this day, is we're talking about restaurants and talking bad about us and this and that. And he goes, "You know how most race car drivers fail or lose a race?" I go, "No." He goes, "Look in the rearview mirror."
Wow.
He goes, "Never look in the rearview mirror. Just look forward." And
my grandpa said, "Stay in your own lane."
Yeah, same thing.
It's very challenging though. We all have egos, and it's really hard not to get distracted, right? Looking in that rearview mirror, but I'll tell you what, the most fulfilling feeling that you can have is the ability to not care to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Right, and it's hard, especially when you're starting. Right, because then you're comparing yourself. You talked about that restaurant that has, people to look out for, right? Constantly looking in the rearview mirror. When someone else gets a listing that I don't, it was, the jealousy feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, it's always back to that product and service, right? Believing in first starts with self. You got to believe in yourself. And self, you're going to know, the deeper you believe in self, the better educated you are, the more committed you are. And then from there, you'll be able to deliver a great product, whether that's a dish or a service to help someone buy or sell luxury real estate. That's what it's all about. It's
customer service.
Yeah.
No matter how we look at it, either way. I mean, if I worked in this industry, it's still customer service. You still have to take care of the customer,
Yeah.
But even like you said, how many of those have happened that somebody else got a listing? Then a month later, you pick it up, right? Because they realize, they realize.
You try a new restaurant, and then you're like, "Man, I regret that."
It happens to me. Like, new restaurant opens, people all go to the new guy, and they go, "Man, we missed cracked pepper because we got better this, better that." So
you can't win them all,
You
right?
can't, no.
You know, and I it took me a while to accept that,
Yeah.
right? Like of, you know, there's so much out there. There's so much, call it food on the table for everyone to eat. You just gotta keep doing what you're good at and constantly be what you and I share very common is constantly looking for that growth,
Right.
right? And growth in self, growth in business. And if you're not growing, you're going to be declining.
Yeah.
Right. And no one likes stability. No one likes going backwards. But that's on us to keep growing that as leaders.
Yeah,
in this
even
organization.
economy, times change, interest rates are high. You know, it's hard to sell sometimes,
Yeah.
but you have to figure out ways. Same thing for us. Food cost is high. What do? You know, you got to figure out different ways to
Yeah.
make money or save money on the product that we're selling or save the customer money. So that's kind of where we're at right now, you know, with this current economy.
Yeah.
We're having to change direction a little bit, but which is good.
Yeah.
Which is good. It gets us out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like being uncomfortable. So to wrap up, because I can
Yeah.
talk to you all day, if you were to give the audience a little bit of advice on entrepreneurs starting a business, whether it's a restaurant or, you know, now a new coffee shop or roasting
Right.
company, what would it be? You know, your primary takeaways from what you believe at the core for people that are maybe in a position where they're mentally struggling to say, man, I want to go chase this, or I want to go and try that.
You know, we can read all the self-help books. We
Yeah.
can read all the How to Grow Rich books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad books.
Yeah.
But you have to take that initial step and go do it.
First step forward.
First step forward, and don't look back. Just keep going forward. And that's how it was for me. I could read all these help books, and you know they have all these great numbers. It makes sense, but if you don't take that step forward, you're never going to
Yeah.
achieve it.
You know, the takeaway I had from your first step forward, I was asking you of like, well, why wouldn't you take that step, right? It just didn't I don't know why you wouldn't. And you're like, because there was no backwards.
Right.
That's super powerful.
Yeah.
Right? Because like, why wouldn't anyone try to take a step forward? If you fall, you stumble, you whatever,
Yeah.
you get back up and you try again. You keep stepping forward.
Especially younger guys out there.
Yeah.
You guys have a lot of time in your hands. Just get out there and do it. I'm 55, starting a coffee shop or roasting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm feeling my age.
Yeah.
You know? But if you're young, you have nothing to lose, man. Just
Yeah.
go forward.
That's
Do
super
it.
cool. Well, for those who haven't gone to Crack Pepper, which I feel very sorry for you guys, most of you guys have, but go visit Vatche at Crack Pepper. And then as far as the roasting business, what is that going to be called? Do you have a branded name?
Sanctuary Coffee Roasting
Okay.
Company.
Sanctuary Coffee Roasting Company is actually going to be the beans
Yes.
and the roast?
Yeah, Sanctuary Coffee Roasting Company is
Okay.
actually the name. And then the roast we're working on 4 different roasts right now, possibly 5.
Nice.
And we have our espresso blend already nailed. We got a few more tweaks to do to it. So
Love
we've been
it.
tasting
So we can
it.
all taste those at Sanctuary Coffee Shop here
Not
in town?
yet, not yet. We're about a month
Okay.
away into getting the equipment, the facility.
Awesome. And then we talked some other thoughts of like pods and buying the coffee direct. So I'm looking forward to that.
Pods,
We'll definitely have it
iced
here at the office.
coffees, you know, nitro brews. So we're all gonna eventually ease into those, but we're starting out with 5 different products and the pods eventually or soon after that.
Awesome.
It's all fun. It's all
Awesome.
it's interesting. The process is so cool.
I love it, man. All right, guys. Well, to visit those Crack Pepper and Sanctuary Coffee Shop, hit the links below. And thanks for joining us here today.